Hey guys, I wanted to do a quick video here because even though I don't generally do these kinds of videos on Sunday, this happens to be a Sunday issue about what happened in church today. And I'm not going to talk about what church I go to. Those of you who know me know which one it is, so it's not important. Because I don't want some people getting mass amounts of emails or phone calls or anything like that. But a letter was read in church today, and it was sent out to basically all of the subordinate churches here in Texas. And this is what the letter said, because it really bothers me. And I'm going to explain why it bothers me as I go through this. And so I'm going to read through it. Now, as I read through it, though, I am going to cut myself off and address the issues that I have, because the issues I have stem almost immediately as the letter is written. And I think this is important. This is an important discussion that we need to have, because we have an intersection of two essential and fundamental liberties that we enjoy in this country. The first, of course, is the right to worship however we choose. Keep that in mind, however we choose. And if we choose not to worship, we have that right as well. And so everyone has a right to that, but we also have a fundamental and inalienable right to our lives and to our defending our lives. And the Second Amendment enshrines our ability and codifies our ability to be able to defend that life with arms from any threat, wherever that threat may come from, whether it's the street thug or the government thug. It doesn't matter. So this letter was read today at church, and it was sent to me because obviously I'm in law school and I'm not attending that church. And so I didn't get to see this, but it starts out, the title of this is Texas Legislation Regarding Firearms on Religious Premises. Under legislative changes that become effective on September 1st, 2019, it will no longer be illegal to carry concealed weapons in places of worship. I'm going to stop right there. This is the first sentence, and whoever wrote this is already completely wrong. It has not been illegal. Not since 1995 has it been illegal to carry a gun in places of worship. It is not. I've been carrying guns legally into my church, and many people across the state of Texas have been carrying their guns legally into church since 1995, when the concealed handgun license law was passed. Here's what the law did. See, under previous law, or actually under current law, but until September 1st of 2019, the current law, or if you're watching this video after September 1st, the previous law was that the churches or places of worship were considered a prohibited place. However, if you skipped down, I think it was subparagraph E. I didn't look it up. It was either E or F. I think it was E. If you skip down, it said that paragraph that talked about churches was not applicable unless they posted signage. In other words, the law said it's illegal to take guns into places of worship, and then other places, and then more verbiage, and then this, that, and the other. And then it says, section so-and-so, which applies to the places of worship, does not apply if they don't have signage up. So if they didn't have signage up, it was perfectly legal. It was perfectly legal to carry. The problem is, that's obviously very confusing, because if you don't read the entire law in the entire context, and you stop at just the bulleted list of places where weapons are prohibited, you would think that guns are prohibited at churches just automatically, just by statute. But that wasn't the case, because that same law created an exception later on in the law. And I've already written about this. I've probably even already done a video about this, if I remember correctly. What the current law did, the one that's going to take effect on September 1st, 2019, was that it removed that confusion. It removed places of worship and a few other places as prohibited places, but it did not prevent churches, because they are private property, from putting up signs. So literally, You were able to carry legally before, you're able to carry legally today. So when the letter starts out and says that it will no longer be illegal to carry concealed weapons in places of worship, it wasn't before unless you put up a sign. And it isn't now unless you put up a sign. So the very premise that this letter is even based upon is false. It's just a false premise that it's even predicated on, because it's always been illegal, or it's always been legal, excuse me. I continue. However, the law permits churches to prohibit weapons on religious premises by giving, quote, effective notice. The effective notice may be written, i.e. posted a sign on a building, or oral, announced verbally. Yes, which is exactly what the law was before. That's what the law is on August 31st, 2019. That's what the law will be on September 1st, 2019. Again, all the legislature did this year was simplify the law so it wasn't as confusing. The decision has been made not to place written signs on our buildings, but rather, prior to the September 1st, 2019, we are asking all bishops in Texas to read the following statement in the sacrament meetings of the units to give effective oral notice to members of the church and visitors that weapons are not prohibited. And here's what bishops have to read. And I guess I'm probably gonna out my church, because as I read this, yeah, it's gonna say. So sorry, I guess my church shouldn't have done this. As of September 1st, this is what has to be read at church. And as of September 1st, 2019, Texas law will permit, once again, false premise. All right, I'm going to read this whole thing and I'm not going to give you any commentary. As of September 1st, 2019, Texas law will permit the carrying of open and concealed weapons in places of worship unless a person is notified that it is prohibited. The handbook states, quote, churches are dedicated for the worship of God and as havens from cares and concerns of the world. With the exception of current law enforcement officers, the carrying of lethal weapons on church property, concealed or otherwise, is prohibited, close quote. And it quotes the handbook this is quoted from. This announcement constitutes effective notice that it is not permissible to enter the premises of a Latter-day Saint building with open or concealed weapons except as permitted by the church's policy, close quote. That's what's got to be read. Now, several things here. This is what drives me nuts. So for those that were there, and by the way, I haven't received effective verbal notice, oral notice, okay? This was not given to me by someone that has the authority to tell me I can't carry guns, and the church is not putting up signs. However, many people that were in attendance sent this to me and let me know that this is what was read at church today and sent me this letter. Many people, and not just one, I'm talking my phone after church and a couple people during church sent this to me because they knew I wasn't there. First of all, they're carving out, well, first of all, this is a change as far as I know, because the last time I read the church handbook, it only said that the carrying of firearms into church buildings was, quote, inappropriate. Well, I don't care what they think is inappropriate. I think it's appropriate because it's my life that I'm defending. And I've been carrying guns into my church for I don't know how long now, and it's never been a problem. But suddenly the legislature decides it's going to fix language in the law, and it's a problem. But it makes us an exception for law enforcement. And look, the law enforcement conviction rate, if you're a cop, and that's your community, the thin blue line, if you are in the law enforcement community, the conviction rate of the law enforcement community, according to FBI statistics, and heck, it's probably worse in Texas, is 1.9%. That means that 1.9% of all law enforcement commits some crime of a Class B misdemeanor or higher. Now, that's still a low number compared to the general public. So it's a low number. So I'm not saying that, oh my gosh, cops are criminals. Now, these are just the ones that are convicted, okay? Just the ones that are convicted. By comparison, just the ones that are convicted of Texas license to carry holders, 0.3%. So you are more likely to be the victim of a crime. You're 6 times more likely, more than 6 times, more likely to be the victim of a crime by a police officer than the victim of a crime by a license to carry holder. But yet our church has decided that it wants to have the 1.9% conviction rate in the congregation as opposed to the 0.3% conviction rate of the congregation. But none of that really matters, because it doesn't matter if somebody comes into the building and you don't have any cops in the building and they start shooting. If you follow this policy and you agree to abide by its terms and not carry because you don't want to be considered a criminal, you're dead. There's no one there to protect you. Now, before I continue reading the letter, I'm going to read the letter first because it's almost over. Those not in attendance when this policy is announced may possibly carry a gun, open or concealed, into a church building in the future. Should that occur, the priesthood leader should read the approved statement above and kindly ask them to comply by removing the firearm from the building. This action will satisfy the legal notice required for that and any future occurrences. It may also be helpful to ask priesthood leaders to discuss this policy in ward and state councils and to train members as needed to address any concerns. All immediate threats are to be reported immediately to local law enforcement. Sincerely yours, the North America Southwest Area Presidency. So there's the policy. Our church has now decided that it's going to become a gun-free zone and has made it official, at least here in Texas. It has decided, well, I don't know what it's decided. I've got several questions here about this policy and what the church's thinking is. First of all, in Texas, let me go over the law. If you go past a 30-6 or 30-7 sign, or you violate that statute, it is a Class C misdemeanor now. Okay, that means it's punishable by a $200 fine. So if you're willing to risk a $200 fine by getting caught, that's what you can do now. It's no longer a Class B misdemeanor. However, if they give you official notice or formal notice, either orally or written, and they tell you to leave, and you still refuse to leave, or if they give you notice and you refuse to abide by it, that is now a Class A misdemeanor, which is, I believe, like a $10,000 fine and up to a year in jail. Those are the punishments if you get caught for doing this. So is my church now telling me that someone who has no ill intent, someone who is not a threat to anybody, someone who carries purely in self-defense, in case, as has happened in Colorado, Kentucky, Georgia, here in Texas, Sutherland Springs, anybody? Is it telling me now that if I decide that I'm going to defend myself in violation of this church policy, that now, because it's telling church members to call law enforcement, so now my peaceful exercise of a right, two rights, by the way, going to church and exercising my right to self-defense, they are going to now ruin my life by calling law enforcement, throwing me in jail, possibly having me killed, because if I have a gun in church and someone calls the police and says, there's a man with a gun at church, I'm probably going to be shot and killed and murdered. This is what the church wants to do. The church wants to ruin my life at a minimum by forcing me through the legal system and putting a record on my sleeve, giving me a record just because of their policy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, am I not going to be able to achieve the celestial kingdom now if I carry and don't get caught and I do it in a way that nobody knows? Because by golly, now I'm violating the wishes of our church leaders, the people who we are supposed to look for guidance and who tell us, at least give us advice on how to live our lives in a way that is Christ-like. Although I would disagree that this is a Christ-like philosophy, considering that we were told to, if we don't have a sword, to sell our cloak and buy a sword. Why would you need a sword? For self-defense, of course. So am I going to hell if I decide to ignore this church policy? Am I temple worthy? Am I able to go to the temple now? Am I worthy to answer those questions if I decide that, you know what, I don't care what the church says, I am not going to be a victim. I am going to worship and I'm going to exercise my right to self-defense. Am I now not worthy as a member of the church? Should I stop taking the sacrament? Should I stop wearing my garments? What is the church saying here? Is the church saying that my life is not that important, that I have no reasonable expectation to defend myself? Is the church going to hire security guards? Because the same laws that went into effect also allow churches to create private security for those churches without having to get private security licenses. Is the church going to do that? Are they going to station police officers at our doors now to ensure that someone doesn't come into the church with a gun, with a shotgun, like has happened up in Tennessee? Here's the simple fact. I'm a law-abiding citizen. And because I'm a law-abiding citizen, even though I haven't effectively been given oral notice by the statute, someone can't come up to me and say, hey, just so you know, because you weren't there, they read this letter on the pulpit, and so therefore, you're not allowed to carry guns anymore. Well, I haven't been given official notice yet. But I know the letter's out there, and I'm not going to violate the church's policy, but I'm also not going to break the law. So guess what that means? I guess I'm just not going to go to church. And if that's what the church wants, I'm sorry, but is the church telling me that I have no right to feel comfortable when I'm sitting at church? That I have no right to feel secure that should something happen, I will be prepared? There's a lot to answer for here. Now, what I've done is I've crafted an email to my bishop, and I've asked him to push it up to the authors of this memorandum at the higher levels of church authority with a lot of exactly what I've just told you here. And they're very pointed and they're very matter of fact about what I'm looking for as far as my answers go. And I guess depending on those answers is going to depend on whether or not people see me at church anymore on Sundays. Because I am not going to go to a place where I can't defend myself, where I can't defend my family, and where I can't defend my fellow brothers and sisters sitting around me in that church. Because I love them enough that that's why I carry. Because I want to protect their lives. Just like Stephen Williford did down in Sutherland Springs. My gun is there to protect me, my family, and those around me. It is a purely self-defense tool. That's all I've got to say about that.